Hey guys, welcome back to Oak Abode. As I'm sure you are all aware, things are getting crazy out there with inflation and food prices and fuel prices. So today I'm just gonna go over my 5 favorite plants to offset the cost of inflation and really just increase self-reliance. I did a whole blog post on money-saving gardening tips, so I will link that for you below, where I kind of go over a few of these plants. In this video, I'm just gonna talk about the plants that we grow that save us the most money based on kind of basic general calculations. It's important to know that a lot of people spend way more than they really have to with gardening. So I'm gonna go over these money-saving plants, but I also want to encourage you to not go out and just spend a ton of money on these plants and the setup. Make sure you do other research around gardening so that it doesn't end up being a net loss. Gardening can definitely be a major net gain and money saver. It can also be a money sink. So do some research before you jump right in. Number 1, the first plant to grow that can save a ton on your grocery bill is berries. So I'm talking raspberries, blackberries, strawberries, sometimes blueberries, although blueberries can be very hard to grow and a little more expensive to grow depending on where you are. Just off of some basic calculations, growing your own raspberries can save you almost $500 a year just for kind of a standard family of 4. And these are all calculations I did months ago, so now that food prices are rising and fuel costs are rising, they're probably even gonna be more savings. What I got was savings of $488 per year for a family to grow their own raspberries. Now I know what you're thinking right off the bat. You're thinking, Kathleen, I don't spend $500 a year on fresh raspberries. There's no way I'd save that much money. It's time to start thinking how generations before us during the Great Depression and during other times of trial thought instead. So yes, you're likely gonna be getting more raspberries than if you were just buying them in pints from the store. However, you're also gonna save money on other things. So the idea is to make the raspberries into things that will save you money so you don't have to buy other products. For example, yes, we'll eat the raspberries fresh. Also, making them into raspberry jam, so it's gonna save you on jams and spreads. Raspberry jam is one of my all-time favorite foods, and when we have it, I put it on pancakes, I put it on bread, obviously, put it on a lot of other things where otherwise I might have bought maple syrup, put it on ice cream where I might have bought other ice cream toppings. So you can recoup those savings in a lot of other ways. Other than just thinking of it as not buying the berries fresh, you have to think of all the ways that you can make use of those berries. One of the biggest ways that we spend is on frozen berries. So we don't necessarily like to buy them fresh. We like to buy them frozen for smoothies and a lot of other things. But that is actually a realistic number for us based on how many frozen berries we buy or used to buy. Those savings can become very real. So raspberries were around $488 of savings if we were to grow them ourselves. Blackberries came really close as well, around $480 a year in blackberry savings to grow them ourselves. Strawberries were not quite as high. I came to around $128 a year. I think that's a little low because we do eat a lot of strawberries and we would if we're growing them and while we're growing them, which we do. But this is just kind of based on these baseline calculations where I kept the number of plants the same, the number of people the same, etc. So just for comparison between the raspberries and blackberries, I kept the strawberry numbers the same, but I still think strawberries are well worth the cost to grow ourselves, and they're a little bit easier. They take a little less time to establish in my experience, so that's another great plus. I know a lot of people don't bother to grow berries because they take about a year to maybe even 2 years to establish. It is so worth it, and now is the time to put in the investment, in the time, and the work to reap that benefit for years to come. I feel very confident that this inflation problem and this food crisis is not going anywhere. I feel very confident that the solution is not going to come anytime soon. If you're looking for a plant that is not going to take years to establish and that you can get a maximum bang for your buck on growing, one of the biggest ones that I have found is herbs. So fresh herbs are so expensive. In the store where we live, and we're just in Wisconsin, they're up to around $6 for a little container that goes bad in like 3 days if you don't use it right away, which I have been known to do on occasion. It's actually the same price or cheaper to buy a live plant in my experience, whether it's basil or whether it's thyme, rosemary, sage, all these really popular herbs that are really easy to use in everyday cooking. I guess these savings kind of depend on the fact that we are cooking ourselves and not necessarily going out to eat all the time. If you're going out to eat all the time, obviously you're not going to save a lot of money by growing your own food. Assuming that you're cooking with your food, I have saved so much money right off the bat by just buying fresh herb, live herb plants instead of buying them off of the grocery shelves. The nice part about growing your own herbs, if you do it correctly, just know how to harvest them so that they regenerate. So there are ways to harvest basil where you will destroy the plant if you just pull all the leaves off, but also you can prune it back and harvest basil the correct way, time the correct way, all these different plants so that after you harvest them, they grow back. But I've had a lot of success with cuttings. So if I harvest a bunch of basil and then I have more than I need, I put some in a glass of water, it develops roots, and I plant it again, and we have not had to buy fresh herbs for a long time because of this. And as an added bonus, they don't take up a lot of space, they don't require a lot of infrastructure. Fresh herbs are one of the best ways to go if you want to save money on your grocery bill, in my opinion. I did link some of the most popular, my favorite herbs that we use most commonly down for you guys below, so don't forget to check out the links in the description. Number 3, another one of the plants that you can grow yourself that is going to give you a really good bang for your buck and also is really not that hard. Now we're talking microgreens. So a lot of people don't think of microgreens when they are thinking of how can I grow my own food, because a lot of people don't necessarily buy their own microgreens from the store. One of the reasons is because microgreens tend to be relatively pretty expensive. They're kind of a luxury item. People will have like urban farm gardens where they sell microgreens to like really high-end restaurants. Basically, they're just the same plants that you would eat when they're older, except they're harvested very young, very tender. They are so high in nutrients. They're tender, they're so flavorful, they're fresh, they're delicious. And from planting to harvest, it's usually not more than 2 weeks. So we like to grow microgreens in place of things like spinach, in place of lettuce. I have just completely lost taste for lettuce because number one, it's not something that I personally enjoy that much. It's also not the most nutrient dense food. So if you eat a lot of lettuce, if you eat a lot of spinach, we do eat a lot of spinach, it can easily be replaced by microgreens grown at home. I think my favorite microgreens right now are arugula. They're so delicious and peppery. We put microgreens on soup, we put it in our smoothies, we put them on top of steak, basically just any meal, eggs, any meal that we make that we wanna make a little bit healthier, we just throw a handful of microgreens on there. They're so nutrient dense, so good for you. And they're kind of a luxury item that you can grow on your own for really cheap, and it only takes a few days. So when we replace our kind of weekly spinach haul or lettuce haul or cabbage haul with microgreens, put them on tacos. That way we save a lot of money because fresh greens are not cheap at the grocery store, and I really believe they're just gonna keep getting more expensive. I will link all of our microgreen gear down below. Another nice thing about microgreens is you can grow them anywhere. You can grow them in the city. You just need a little bit of sunlight and a little tray, some water, some soil, and you're pretty much good to go. Now, number 4 kind of depends on your lifestyle. I think everybody can benefit from adding more microgreens into their diet. But if you're somebody who does eat a lot of spinach and a lot of lettuce, then growing it yourself might be worth your while. They are some of the more expensive things that we buy from the grocery store, and they are also some of the plants that are quicker from planting to harvest. So that's why I did put lettuce and spinach on this list. The other thing I added is kale. I really like to grow kale in kind of a cut and come again fashion, so I don't like to harvest a whole head of kale. I like to kind of pick off leaves, let it continue to grow, and come back over and over. Usually 3 to 4 plants will feed our family for the entire season. The other thing I really like about kale is it's a little more cold hardy, so it lasts longer and stands up to cooking better too. And it's really easy to blend and freeze. I do the same thing with spinach. So when we have too much spinach, we'll blend it and put it in ice cube trays and freeze it. I do want to warn you, I don't personally think lettuce and spinach are some of the more cost-effective things to grow because they tend to bolt. If you live in a climate like ours where it goes from cold to kind of temperate to really hot and then kind of temperate again, that growing season for spinach and lettuce is really not all that long, and in my opinion, I don't think it saves all that much money. The kale, however, the harvest window is a lot longer, so if you are someone who eats a lot of leafy greens and you want to try and grow your own instead of the microgreens, which I still prefer, I think they're a lot easier, a lot harder to screw up, which means money lost, then I prefer kale. I think it's not as yummy, I guess, as lettuce and spinach, but in terms of money saving, it's probably something that is really worth looking into and learning how to cook with, learning how to utilize to save on that grocery bill. Finally, the last thing that I'll talk about is just kind of a broad category, what I'm calling prolific bearers. So if you are a gardener, you're probably surprised that I haven't mentioned tomatoes yet. I haven't mentioned zucchini yet. The reason is because I'm just putting kind of all those prolific plants, which means they produce a lot per plant of edibles. I'm putting all these in one category because I think it so depends on your specific lifestyle, your specific diet. So if you are somebody who doesn't eat a lot of tomatoes, then you're not gonna save money by growing a lot of tomatoes, right? You're gonna wanna look at your diet and think, okay, what do I buy a lot of and what am I actually going to use? That is what is so key about growing your own food. A lot of people start gardens and then they get carried away, myself included. I'm speaking from experience here. I started out wanting to plant, all these different varieties of tomatoes and eggplants. I've never eaten an eggplant in my life. So obviously it was just lost money when I planted eggplant and I didn't know how to use it, and most of it ended up going to the chicken. So at least that was one good use for it. But prolific plants are gonna be the ones that maybe you have to wait a little bit longer to harvest them. So they might take a few months to reach harvest, but they're going to give you a lot of crop in return. So I'm thinking kind of tomatoes, zucchini, and summer squash, a really, really big one. We eat a lot of zucchini and summer squash. So 1 to 2 plants can feed our family for the summer and create so much food. And I think the bag at Costco right now, it was like around $8 for a bag of like 5 or 6 zucchini. We grill up zucchini and it is so, so good. So I would think about tomatoes, zucchini, eggplant if you eat a lot of eggplant. Beans are another good option if you can stay on top of harvesting them. I tend to let my beans go too long and I don't harvest them as much. Basically, I'm thinking plants that are not just one-time harvest. So like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, you're gonna kind of put a lot of work into, and you're probably gonna invest in like the soil and the infrastructure quite a bit, and then you're only gonna get a little bit out. If that's something that you wanna do, by all means, go for it. But if you're looking for just ways to specifically save on your grocery bill, peas are great too. They have a shorter harvest window, but you can obviously harvest them and make really good use out of them. So in my calculations, these things didn't save. It's all on the blog. If you click the link to the blog, I go into more detail there. But the prolific bearing plants kind of are all like what you put into it is what you'll get out of it in terms of savings. And a lot of people, myself included, struggle to stay on top of pest control and weeding and starting the seeds and just staying on top of the harvest. Even for zucchini, you can only make so much zucchini bread before you're really not saving money because you're not getting the fresh zucchinis that you're having to go and buy from the store because you waited too long to harvest them off your own plant. So these prolific bearers are all what you make of them. You're going to make, probably you're gonna have the most savings from a really solid tomato plant that you put a lot of work into preserving, which is wonderful and can translate to a bunch of savings. But if you don't preserve them, if you don't make them in a tomato sauce, in a pizza sauce, into ways that you can use them over the winter as well, then the savings aren't gonna be quite as much. So my advice, if you are looking to plant a garden to save on your grocery bill, my biggest advice would be go into it thinking, what am I already buying from the store? Not just what looks good in the seed catalog, but what am I already buying from the store? And what can I handle? Because there is a point of diminishing returns. If you plant too much, you are not gonna be able to keep up with the harvest, with the weeding, with the pests, and then it's going to be an overall loss. So don't be afraid to cut back if you need to. Don't be afraid to start with just 1 or 2 plants if you need to. But that's kind of why I started with the berry plants and with the microgreens. Those are 2 really solid options that are so easy to stay on top of and to handle. And then from there, move on to other plants. We gotta be in this for the long haul, because I could be wrong, but I don't think things are gonna go back to where they were anytime super quick. And even if they did, what's not to say that this can happen again in the future? I think a lot of us are looking to save money, but a lot of us are also just looking for food security too. And if fuel prices are gonna keep going up, that means everything else is gonna keep going up too. So why not make lemonade out of lemons and grow your own food, have it taste better, have it be fresher, healthier for you, not have to worry about buying food that has to be transported across the country. And better yet, if we could get back into kind of trading with our neighbors and what we have excess of, kind of trading for other stuff that we're not so good at growing, I think that would be really cool too. The other thing I didn't talk about is fruit trees. I think this kind of goes in with the berries. Fruit trees can take years to become established, but once they're established and once you kind of get the hang of fruit trees, I also think that is a really, really good investment to make now. We planted 16 fruit trees on our property this year, and we are so excited to see how that pays off in the future. If you have extra of all of these things that you're planting, you can always feed them to your chickens. I still don't know, even with prices going up as much as they are, I don't know that eggs, if we're making money on our eggs or not. So I didn't put chickens and eggs on this list. Obviously you can save money on chickens and eggs if you go about it a certain way. If they're pets, you're probably not gonna save a lot of money, but I can tell you that by growing your own food and giving your chickens the excess, you will definitely save feed costs there. These are my 5 absolute favorite things to grow to offset the grocery bill and other bills too. Plus they also just taste so much better when you grow them yourself. But I would love to hear from you all what you are growing to save money on your grocery bill, what you've grown in the past, what maybe you're thinking about changing for the future with times changing. Please leave a comment with your favorite things to grow, but also the things that you think save you the most money. I do know that some of these plants you have to have a little bit of space to grow. So if you are somebody who is in the city and you want to grow your own food and you want more ideas for how to do that, the next video I put out is going to be more about kind of what you can grow anywhere, more like the microgreens and herbs. But I will get more into that in the next video, what you can grow to save money without having a lot of space. So if you haven't already, don't forget to hit subscribe so that you can stay posted for that. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.